So, Mickey, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. So, obviously, I know yourself, I'm a big Sunderland fan, but a lot of my listeners across the country and the world might not know of yourself as a former Sunderland great. And just some of the clubs that you've played for is obviously Sunderland, Leeds, Celtic, Blackburn, Sheffield Wednesday, and England. Can you just tell us where your kind of football career began? Were you always destined to become a footballer back in the early days?
Well, in our day, it was obviously before you actually joined a football club. It was basically Saturday and Sunday league football, and maybe even playing for your school. And I think what you basically used to do was hope, even at a young age, that there was football scouts out there that were obviously searching for a little bit of talent, and that was what happened with me. I went to loads of clubs. I couldn't even name them all, to be honest with you, but the one I was waiting for was Man United. Because that was a team that I supported as a kid, although people would think that I supported Sunderland, but it was always Man United when I was growing up. And there was a guy called Jim Hagan who had been watching me for 5 to 6 weeks. He started to have a conversation with my parents, and they invited me down to the School of Excellence at, it was actually in Durham somewhere.
Yeah.
And Sir Alex Ferguson was there, and there was Brian Pop Robson, who obviously started working at Sunderland eventually. And that's where it all began, to be honest with you.
And in terms of that must have been a massive achievement at a young age. And did you feel like that was the journey then? Did you feel like all of a sudden at a young age, I'm in here now? And because I think it was the Manchester United class, you were within the class of 92, weren't you, with the Beckham and all of that era? When that kind of first began, were you overwhelmed by that? Walking into an academy with such a prestige?
Well, there was a lot of talent knocking around, let's be honest with you. I mean, if you go to Manchester United at the time, you were going to the best. And I think what you had to do, even at a young age, you had to believe in your own ability. And I knew that I had something that was a little bit different to everybody else. I could tell that when I was playing through the years, even growing up as a youngster, from maybe the age of 9, 10, 11, 12. But then eventually, after the School of Excellence and maybe the trials, if you like, you get invited down to Manchester United's training ground, which was, they had two at the time. One was the Cliff where the first team used to train, and the other one was Littleton Road. And I never really knew any of the players, to be honest with you. Travelled down on the train, something I'd never done before. As a young lad, I think I was 13 years old at the time. Somebody waiting for you at the end to take you to like your dorms, if you like, or you used to stay in a certain family's house. And then the first day in training, you think there's going to be 4 or 5 of you, but there wasn't. There was 50 or 60 of us. And as you're playing the games and whatever training sessions you're doing, you kind of pick out the ones who you think are talented players. They weren't all going to ever sign for Manchester United, but you could certainly pick out. Well, Giggsy was the pick out. He was called Ryan Wilson at the time.
Yeah.
It was probably the only person that I knew of before I actually turned up at Manchester United, because people have been speaking about him for years, and he didn't let anybody down. He was just head and shoulders above anybody else. The things that he used to do in training were just like off the scale. But it was about just trying to impress. I think that was what it was all about. He used to go down for weeks and 2 weeks and the 6 weeks holidays. And just didn't want to come back, to be honest with you. The way that they treated you, the way that looked after you, the training sessions, learning every single day. And I'll keep going back to this probably, but even at a young age, I learned so much of what it was going to take to be a first-team football player.
Did you? And do you think other players at the time knew that as well? Or do you think it takes a certain mentality to go to make it? Do you think others were like... Did they get overwhelmed? Is it hard not to compare yourself to obviously a Ryan Giggs, Ryan Wilson at the time, who was absolutely outstanding? How hard is it to not compare, thinking, am I at that level? Is this the level I need to be at?
Well, that's entirely up to you. It's your own mindset, of how good you want to be. There's obviously individuals out there that you just know that you can't reach their level. They've just got something that is special. And as you've seen from Ryan's career, as he obviously progressed through into the first team, he was always going to be a superstar. And then you look at the trophies that he won and how long he stayed at Manchester United. I mean, it speaks for itself. But you've got to try and aspire to those type of lads. You know, they're the same age as you, but you go, right, okay, I need to get as close to him as I possibly can. Now, I was a left winger at the time. Yeah. So that was probably one of the reasons I was looking at Ryan, thinking, you know, am I ever going to get ahead of him? And eventually, when I was training at Man United, we went on a few trips. There was a trip to France. I remember we went on for about 10 days. And Eric Harrison, we had Nobby Stiles, who was one of our coaches, Brian Kidd. And they said to me, we're going to play your left back behind Ryan. So that was the first time I probably played in that position. But it was something that they saw in me that I probably never saw myself, because I'd never played that position, but fitted into it pretty well. And they basically just said to me, whenever you get the ball, just give it to Ryan. And I understood why, because I think by the quarter-final stage, we went all the way. I think we won the final, or we might have played Paris Saint-Germain in the final. This is when I was 14 or 15 years old. And by the quarter-finals, he'd already won player of the tournament. He was just like an incredible talent.
It's amazing. It's amazing. How do you think it's changed now, sticking in with that kind of early age, what they call academy system? How do you think football's changed now within the academy system to when you were around at 14, 15?
Well, there's good things and bad things. I think the way that you look after the players, I mean, everything that they need doing for them is pretty much done for them now. I mean, even schooling. You know, if you sign for one of the big clubs now, I mean, they've got hotels you can stay in. They've got tutoring for you every single day. So that side of it is a plus, and it obviously it helps the players moving forward, because they don't really have to travel anywhere. They're in that bubble themselves already. The other side, which I don't like, which what we used to do was, and ours was an apprenticeship when you signed. You had to prove yourself over them 2 years. You had to merit and deserve your professional contract. Even little things like cleaning the dressing rooms. Well, eventually, obviously, after Manchester United, I signed my apprenticeship at Sunderland. And little things like you weren't allowed anywhere near the first team dressing room. If you went into that first team dressing room, you were either invited into it, or you'd been asked to be part of the squad on match days. It was the only time we ever got anywhere near it as young lads. Yeah, cleaning baths out, cleaning showers, toilets, cleaning the floors and the dressing rooms, picking all the kit up for your first team players and putting it in skips. And you got designated either 2 or 3 professionals every single season when you were an apprentice, and you had to make sure that their boots were clean, polished every single day. Their kit was cleaned up. The young lads now, they don't do that, and you might think, you know, it's a little bit petty, but I thought it was a brilliant learning curve of respecting your elders. Wanting to earn the right to get into that first team dressing room and all these things. It was all about discipline, but you don't realise that as you're going along as a young lad. But eventually further down the line, when somebody's cleaning your boots and putting your kit out, you understand why you did it.
Yeah. And do you think, how is that discipline now within football, and how do the younger players understand that discipline? Because there's certainly a massive debate nowadays, especially my generation of children, you know, 11, 12, 8-year-old coming through, is there's no kind of discipline anymore. And we're the parents to blame for that. Is where do you think that's been in place in football now?
Well, I definitely don't think, and if we're just talking about young professional footballers coming through as we're speaking, they're definitely not as mentally strong as what we were in let's say the 90s and in the noughties, if you want. I think that's something that's lacking. I know football's completely changed now. It's not as physical as it used to be. It's more technical. I mean, some of the ability of these young lads now, I mean, it's just off the scale, isn't it, really? I mean, their world's their oyster if they basically want to reach the top. But there's a batch of young players who will reach the top, and the rest of them will just have very good careers. So, yeah, I mean, look, the way we live our lives has completely changed. It really has. I think, you know, you had to earn everything as a young man. Young professionals, and I saw it when I was playing, probably at the last stages of my career, maybe when I signed for Wolves and Sheffield Wednesday, you know, young lads just walking into the dressing room, sitting down, having a conversation with us, you know, would make a cup of tea and they'd be sat having a cup of tea with us. All little things, you know, if you sit in the restaurant where you eat all together, you used to have a first team table, then a reserve table, and then all the young lads used to eat either in a separate room or in the tables alongside us, just to see how we acted. And it completely changed. It was all mixed. And that's when I started to realise that the respect wasn't there that I used to see when I was a young lad.
Yeah, it's interesting that, and I suppose when you're sitting next to a first team table and how they act is almost like there's an intriguing part of that, because you're not part of it. You want to study it and become part of it. Where if you're sat in a mixed table and you're part of it, you almost feel part of it before you are, or before you've earned that kind of be part of the first team. So I do get that in that respect. When you signed for Sunderland, being a local, how big of a deal was that when you first signed your first apprenticeship?
There was a lot of pride. I was more proud of myself. I know a lot of people were obviously very proud of me, and I'm probably talking about my family here, but I know how difficult that is, because you're not just playing the games for your hometown team, if you like, every single week. Your family are involved in that, but I'm also living in the area that I was brought up in. And I found that really difficult as a young lad, maybe even up to the age of 23, 24. And I think it started to sink in then where, right, I've got to start to distance myself a little bit from the public, if you like. I couldn't go down the beach and have a walk with my family or with my friends. I couldn't go to the shops without somebody approaching me, or I couldn't go to restaurants and things like that. And I found that really hard. And I probably didn't think about this until I got to the latter years of me 20s, because I was living the dream. I was doing what all my friends wanted to do. I was obviously doing what certain people in my family would have loved to have done, and it's quite hard to do, if I'm completely honest with you, because you've just got to cut yourself off from so many people, and certain people can take that one way and other people can take it another way. You think you're getting ignored by one of your friends, but you're not really. It's just like the lifestyle I had to lead.
Yeah. And how did people become envious as well? Because envy is quite a difficult trait in people, and they can almost become jealous. Did you find that being local, doing very well for yourself, earning good money, better money than any of the, the normal local man would do, do you think people became jealous, and was that hard for yourself?
I don't know. I don't think of it like that. Let's not forget, when I made my debut just very early on in my 18th year, I was on 36 quid a week.
Yeah.
That's so, my mates, whether they were a couple of years older than me or a year younger or whatever, they might have been working themselves. They were probably earning more than me. I had to go out and work my socks off for the first 6 months of playing professional football to earn that professional contract, or the bigger contract, if you like. One of the stories was when I travelled away, and this is before I played a first team game. We travelled to Bristol City and Bristol Rovers, and it was Saturday, Tuesday. So I was invited down to stay with the team, and because I'd been on the coach and I'd stayed down for 2 or 3 days, we got a draw, and I think we lost one of the games. But I got a pay slip at the end of the month, and it was more than what I was supposed to get. And it was because I'd had a draw bonus, and I didn't even realise, just because I was part of the squad, I got a draw bonus. So I was like thinking to myself, do I tell someone there's too much in my wage slip here, or do I just keep it? Well, when you're on 36 quid a week, you don't say anything to anybody. So I just enjoyed it. But that's what it was all about for me. I mean, I completely enjoyed every single minute of it. And I always felt like I was fighting to win the next contract, because I wanted to keep bettering myself. And every level that you get to, obviously I started in Championship football. I wanted to be a Premier League player. I wanted to play for my country. And then I obviously had dreams of playing European football, which I'm sure we'll get onto later on in this conversation. But everything that I wanted to achieve, I achieved.
Yeah, and that's brilliant, that. And I think I've got a respect for people like yourself who've achieved something and worked so hard, because I think people take for granted. They may see you pulling on that shirt like you've made it, pulling on that England shirt like you've made it, but people forget that there's 10, 15, 20 years worth of hard work gone into that. And I think it's when you grow your own business like we've done here, is you appreciate the hard work. People see the end product. They don't see the blood, sweat and tears to get there. So I'm always, hence the podcast, interested in the stories behind it. And, I see people who I grew up with, people who I went to school with, you tend to then find that you haven't got much in common with these people anymore because you go on your own path and then you make new friends. And it's interesting to see how that kind of, when you distance yourself from people, like you've said, and I suppose how intense is it playing football in the Northeast compared to other places that you've played?
Well, obviously, I mean, longevity, it was the place I played the most. I was there for 12 and a half years as a professional. I started there as a young lad, and then I didn't leave there until I think it was 03, 04, or maybe 04, 05. And as I said before, I felt from day one until I left, it was super intense, because if I went out and I didn't have a very good game, then I knew what was happening when my phone would ring or a text message. It was just my mates saying, "What happened today?" Or if I went out and had a beer with my mates, exactly the same conversation. So I wasn't just playing it; I was living it. Because all my mates were obviously Sunderland fans. My family were there, and you've got this pressure on your shoulders where you just don't want to let anybody down, because you know exactly what's coming on this Saturday evening, if it's a Saturday afternoon game or definitely on a Sunday. And then through the week, once you go into your house and you close them doors, that was it. It was you and your family. The rest of it, you just you close yourself away from.
Yeah, because I always remember a great story from Kevin Ball where he says he was in the Chinese. I think he was in the Chinese after playing one of his first game, and some bloke said to him, "Are you Kevin Ball?" He says, "I am, yeah." He says, "You're absolutely shite." And he gave him that feedback after a game. And I thought, you hear what Stuart Donald said, that he never expected him. He was almost a bit of a celebrity locally, because I think football is so ingrained in the Northeast tradition. And I was just wondering how it compares to maybe he's going into Sheffield or going to Wolverhampton or going to Leeds. Is it that more intense up here? Are their fans expectant of a little bit more every week?
Yeah. Right. Okay. So I kind of get what you're saying now. Well, I played for some big clubs.
Yeah.
Big clubs. The biggest of them all is Celtic. And I know I only spent a short period of time there. But that was probably the only other place where I lived in the city, other than Sunderland, because when I was playing for Leeds, Sheffield Wednesday and Wolves, I was based in Manchester. So I wasn't living in the city. I wasn't walking around the city. So I didn't feel that pressure after a football match of walking around thinking, right, well, someone's going to say something to me today. Whereas when I was up in Celtic, although only a short period of time, I'd walk into the city because I wasn't too far away from it. I was living in a hotel, and everybody knows you. If you're from the Rangers side or you're the Celtic side, it is football crazy up there. And we know how big it is in the Northeast anyway, Sunderland, Newcastle and Middlesbrough, etc. But that was another level. I've never seen anything like it. And the one game I remember was we played Rangers at Ibrox. And I knew it was a big game. And obviously I'd watched them on TV and stuff. And I'd been involved in the Newcastle Sunderland derbies, or Sunderland Newcastle, whichever way you want to put it. So I'd kind of be ready for it, but nothing gets you ready for that game. I've never been so nervous in my life. The build up 4, 5, 6 days before it, walking into the city, somebody would say something, make sure you don't lose that game, or we don't want to see your face for a week. And if you win the game, we'll love you. We'll put our arms around you. We'll buy you pints, or we'll take you for food, etc. And that was just the way it was up there. And when I got to Ibrox and played in that game, I've never witnessed anything like it. It was just unreal.
Yeah, I've actually been to a Celtic Rangers game myself, and even the field before the match, there's hatred between Sunderland and Newcastle, but that hatred's kind of gone over a day, and then back to work the next week, and you're mixing and the banter and stuff like that. But it doesn't go up there. That's the thing. It's a real ingrained hatred. So I do get that. It's always an interesting comparison. Celtic, Rangers, Sunderland, Newcastle. Very similar, but I think the hatred's a little bit stronger up there. So kind of the best seasons, I believe, is obviously the seasons under Reid. How important was Peter Reid as a manager when he came in to yourself? How did yourself respond when Peter came in?
I think there was optimism because we weren't playing well, which is obviously why he got the job in the first place. And I think the story goes when we first met him, We were all in, we were at Roker Park at the time in the away dressing room, and he gathered all the players together. And then he walked in, and obviously, I mean, wherever he goes, the gaffer, I mean, he's got authority, and he's got that aura about him, certainly at the time. And he walked in the dressing room, and it was 2 or 3 minutes of basically him telling us what he wanted from us over the remaining games of that season, because I think there was a chance we were going to get relegated out of the Championship when he walked through the door. And it was unbelievable. He knew what, I think he was probably one of the only managers while I was there who bought into what Sunderland was all about. He would take us for meals on the seafront, just to get to know the players, get to know the personalities, the characters. He wasn't frightened giving young players an opportunity. And he basically said, look, if you fight for me from first to the last whistle, he said, you'll be here for a long time. And he said it to everybody. It wasn't just me. And I think what he got from the lads in the last 6 or 7 games of that season, I remember one game was at Burnley, definitely, and Martin Smith got a couple of goals that day, was something that I'd not seen in the time I'd been at Sunderland. And I was thinking to myself, right, if we can do it like this for one game, we can do it more than that. And the next couple of seasons after that were just brilliant to be around. Not just him and his personality and his coaches, obviously, that he brought to the club, and Bobby Saxon and people like that. But the squad of players that we had, there was no stars. Probably only Quinny was maybe the one that everybody knew. The rest of us were nobodies, to be honest with you. We had to make names for ourselves. And I think that was what kept us really close together. But as for managers, it's got to be Brady. He was fantastic.
Yeah. And how was it? Because I remember back in, I think it was 96, got promoted to the Premier League, and then the cameras were there, weren't there, for Premier Passion, which was aired. How weird was it having cameras around and filming you? Because I think that's where we all got to know Reedy as fans, and the effing and blinding, and there was no holds barred and that. How weird was it having cameras around the place? And then obviously what we've seen later on in the kind of the Netflix, documentaries.
To be honest with you, it was oblivious to us. Didn't really matter whatsoever. I mean, some days they come up to you and ask you for interviews, whether it was for half an hour or whatever it may be. But it was more to do with the club itself. I certainly think the one that we've seen over the last couple of seasons, the Sunderland Till I Die, is a lot different. Interviewing the players, we obviously seen what goes on behind the scenes with the people who were involved at the club at the time. What was happening on the football field, and basically they did that to try and follow the club to get back to where they deserve to be. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But in our time, we were just on such a wave of enjoying ourselves. The football that we were playing was fantastic. So we didn't really think about it. It was more for the manager and maybe the supporters to see what was going on behind the scenes rather than us as individual players. We just got on with what we needed to do, which was train every week and try and win as many games as we could.
Yeah. And what was it like transitioning? Because, I remember Roker Park, because it was so small and the atmosphere was great. Then you went to the Stadium of Light. How big a transition was that as a footballer? Because that must have been a massive, yes, you've played all over the country, you've played at Old Trafford, but as a home ground, how big was it as a player? How much of a lift was it when you walked out there every week?
Well, I mean, there's obviously older players and myself who have got fantastic memories at Roker Park. There's no question about that. But I think when you've seen what was happening with stadiums around the country, it was time. We needed to get out of Roker Park. We needed to move into the new stadium. And as you've seen, even over the last 2 or 3 seasons, with clubs like West Ham, let's say, for instance, even Tottenham, clubs can struggle and teams can struggle when they walk into new stadiums. But I think we were ready for it. We'd been for walks around the stadium. They were basically telling us how to get to the dressing rooms on match days. And, I saw the building from start to finish. And what was said to us was, we're building this stadium because this club wants to go to the next level, if you like. And I obviously thought then, I was thinking about players. The support was going to obviously get bigger inside the stadium. And I couldn't wait for it. And I think everybody around Sunderland, it might have taken them a little bit of time because, as I said before, supporters have got brilliant memories of Roker Park. But there's no looking back now because that stadium took us to the next level. I think the opening day was Ajax, I think we played.
Yeah, it was.
And when you've got people like Frank and Ronald de Boer playing against you, we were looking around and it was like, wow, if this is the kind of atmosphere that you're going to get in a stadium like this, then, bring it on. And I loved every minute of it. It was brilliant when you were playing well, but believe you me, when you were having a bit of a stinker sometimes, it was hard and there was no hiding place there.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the thing with your occupation, if you like. When you're having a bad day, there's 45,000 people there to remind you you're having a bad day. You cannot hide. And how tough is that mentally to get over that? How do you? No one wants to be told they're not very good, and and a polite way of putting it is, how hard is that mentally to get over that? Is it easy to brush off Saturday night, finished, right, onto the next one, or does it linger around?
And there's no doubt it plays on your mind, absolutely 100%. But if I go back to the beginning of this interview of when I was an apprentice and having that character and learning your trade and cleaning football boots and going into dressing rooms, I think that's what holds you in good stead if things aren't going well for you, because it's character building. And as I say, you work so hard to get into that position in the first place. You're not letting anybody take it away from you. And that's where young lads really struggle now when there's with a full crowd in a stadium. Because if they're gone through a spell of 4 or 5 really poor games, then they hide. They start hiding behind players. They don't want the ball. Every time it comes to them, it's like a hot potato. They can't get rid of it. And that's all about character. But no, it's never nice. I went through a spell of it myself, I think just before I left. And when I went to Celtic, I was getting criticised whether I'd been at the club for too long and the supporters wanted to see change in a different position or not. And obviously they try and pinpoint an individual player. I mean, I can go through so many who've had the same as maybe what I had for a period of 3 or 4 months. And you've got to play your way through it. And I tried to do that, and you've got to block it out. And at the end of the day, my thought process was they're criticising me. And one of the reasons was because they want me to play better. And the other reason was I'm doing what they want to do.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that is the biggest thing of criticism. People criticise because there's a little bit of jealousy on, I wish I was doing that. But then on the other hand, is I often wonder, be careful what you wish for, because especially nowadays, if we fast forward to current day, if you look at what the likes of Marcus Rashford's going through on Instagram, on Twitter, on social media, the abuse he's getting for what I think is quite possibly one of the most standout players right now, doing things off the field, he's using his influence, if you like, for the best purposes, and being absolutely ridiculed for it. And I just think, social media wasn't as big back in the day when, you were playing football. How do you think social media is having an additional effect on players' mental health now?
Well, it's with you 24/7, isn't it? I mean, there's no hiding place. It's interesting that you brought Marcus up and obviously what he's done away from football with Fair Share. Just after Christmas, I think it was, I actually put myself forward to go and work for a day at Fair Share just to see basically what was happening and how the food was getting distributed around the country. And I went at 9 in the morning, and I stayed there till about 3:30, 4 o'clock with my overall on, and I was packing the food away into the back of the trucks, and it's absolutely incredible. And obviously, I mean, on the back of that, he's jumped onto an MBE and absolutely thoroughly deserved. But I saw it for a day. I see these people going there and they're just turning up, volunteering to help out. And it's absolutely sensational. So how anybody can then turn around to somebody like him and criticise him, whether it be for his football or whether it be racially or even something else, is beyond me. But it's the world we live in. It's social media. People think they've got power because they can press a button on their phones or their laptops or their iPads, and not think that there's going to be any circumstances or what's the word I'm thinking of? There's
no repercussion.
Yeah. So there's not going to be any repercussions. Well, there is, because you can imagine, whether you're in the limelight or whether you're not, if you receive a message on social media, and I think the two we're probably speaking about is Twitter and maybe Instagram, and you open it up to see if you posted a photograph and underneath it you've been racially abused or you've been criticised for something that you don't understand, then it hits you hard. It really does. I mean, it hurts. I mean, I get stuff on mine, I go back to the penalty I missed, 22 years ago or nearly 23 years ago now. I get that every 5 or 6 days on social media. But I've learned to, brush it off. It's basically newspaper, if you like. You roll it up one day, you read it one day, and you roll it up and throw it in the bin the next day. But my reaction to it is, and I'm not saying everybody should be exactly the same as me, but I laugh and joke it off. I won't even reply to them. It doesn't bother me. I look at it, I read it, and that's it.
The thing is that at the time, 22 years ago, you've missed that penalty. There's probably nobody feeling any worse than a local lad like yourself in the biggest day, of the history at the time, get back the Premier League. But I believe these things, what people call failures, is not a failure. It's a learning curve, and it's what makes you who you are today. If you've had something not happen right in business, but you come back stronger, and it's your story. Everyone has a story. It's these people who sit on social media and troll, and it is too easy. And I think the trouble is these people think it's not going to get read, or the messages don't get read. It's easy to just throw a comment out there. It'd be interesting to see if social media turned it round and these comments were posted in a news thread or broadcast with the people behind them saying, Dave Macmillan made this comment today and it's on the North East News. And all of these comments people would think twice going, hang on a minute, I'm being outed here for me comments. And I just think Marcus Rashford in particular, he's a massive influencer, if you like, because of what he is and the world stage he's on. But he's using his influence not to sell ad campaigns on football boots, or he's actually using his influence to point some attention at a great cause, which you've worked a day in and you know exactly what they're all about. And people should get off his back and commend him for it. And again, it goes back to, if you're going on holiday and you look at a TripAdvisor, there could be 1,000 great reviews, but you'll pick out the bad 1-star review, won't you?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. That's the trouble. Correct. And it's the same with anything. But the thing with Marcus, I mean, we're picking up on the one individual who might criticize him. Anthony Martial has been having a lot of stick over the last few weeks. There's so many players, to mention. But you're right in what you say. For 100 great comments, the one that people will look at and pick out is the one that's abusive, critical.
And you even do that yourself, as I've noticed, like people I follow on social media, you'll have a little scroll through the comments and there'll be loads of lovely comments and you scroll and then all of a sudden there's a bad one, you stop and you go to your missus, have a look at this. You've just passed 100 great comments. You've just skipped them for that one bad comment. And I think that's something that, we need to maybe pick up on. And just going on the Sunderland finals, and obviously we've got another final coming up. Do you think it's finally our time to win at Wembley?
It'd be nice to see us win there.
Unfortunately, we won't be. Well, as fans, we won't be there.
Yeah, no, exactly. But no, it's just been unfortunate. I mean, we've been involved in some fantastic games. I mean, I obviously speak about the playoff final that I was involved in. I mean, it was an incredible game. One game, I think, which we had a real good chance, and I know we were playing against an incredible team, was when we took the lead against Manchester City. How many ever years it was ago now, but what a really good performance. The playoffs, with the look of the draw, you might actually scrape through that one. I mean, when we play against Portsmouth again at Wembley, were we the better team? There's so many occasions where we've had that opportunity of getting the hoodoo off our back, if you like, of supporters and the club going to Wembley and picking up that win. But things have just been against us. Now we've obviously got another opportunity against Tranmere. And I know people will probably say this. I'd take a defeat if it meant we were going to get promoted, but football doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And I know we've started to turn these draws over the last few weeks into wins, give ourselves a chance of maybe getting into those playoff positions, which we should be anyway.
Yeah.
But what a chance we've got to win that final against Tranmere.
Do you know what? In all said and done, people need to look back, and yes, we can get a little bit of stick off non-Sunderland fans of all of the defeats, but actually the Wembley final against Charlton, where you missed the penalty, I went there with me mum and dad as a child, one of the best days out, remembering back as a child. Both me mum and dad, I lost them both last year, but that's always a day I look back at and go, what a day it was. The emotions, the highs and the lows, not just, penalties was the last, we were up then it was an equaliser. Then we were up. Then it was an equaliser. It was just like one of the best days I've had as a child with my mum and dad. And then I look back to Wembley, the finals that we've had recently. I then get to take my children to Wembley. I get to see them with the faces painted on Wembley Way, having a weekend away with all of their friends and our friends. And, you know, I'd rather have their memories and go, what a memory, than not have them. Do you know what I mean? So I think we're so lucky as football fans to have them memories, because there's a hell of a lot of football clubs out there with no memories of Wembley, never mind wins or losses. So I think when you can look back and you can say some great times, that's what it's all about, being a football fan, isn't it?
Of course it is. I mean, yeah, win, lose or draw, it's your football team, isn't it? And it's not just yourself that supports them. You know, it is generational. So as you just mentioned there before, you've just talked about generations of, you know, you being the child once when you went to Wembley, and then eventually taking your own family there. And it's all special things that you'll never ever forget. You know, it's something that you've done together. You know, you can talk about going on holiday and, you know, what you did on the beach one day, and, you know, you went to a water park and other things. You know, you've obviously done certain things in your life, but I think because it's kind of embedded into your football in the Northeast, and certainly at Sunderland, you know, it's something that you've got to cherish, and your stories and your memories will, you know, they'll live on forever.
Yeah. How, going back to the kind of the 2 7th place finishes, how disappointing was it to miss out on European football? Because I think that was always the big thing. We were so close, yet just not over the line. How big of a disappointment was it in the dressing room when European football didn't come?
Yeah, we were absolutely gutted both seasons. I think the first season, would we have been ready for it? I'm not too sure, but the football that we were playing, everybody probably thought we were. But it was a brilliant achievement, even to where we actually got to. I remember one of the seasons, it might have been the first of the two that you're talking about, was when we played Manchester United around Christmas time. If we'd have won that game, yeah, we would have been top and they would have been second. That's how far we come. You know, we're talking about coming up against Manchester United, an established team, and, you know, one of the biggest clubs, if not the biggest club in the world. And coming away from the stadium, having lost 1-0, I think Coley got the goal that day. I got sent off. Alex Ray and Roy Keane got sent off. And it was just, I mean, what a couple of seasons. And we went into games. I think that the best thing that ever happened to us was when we actually got into the Premier League, that under Peter Reid the second time. We went to Stamford Bridge and Chelsea gave us a serious thumping. Yeah. I think it was 4-0 or 5-0. Zola, Gus Poyet got a couple of goals that day, I think. And we went back into the dressing room and it was more the lads than the gaffer himself. We just kind of looked around and we were talking to each other saying, look, if this is what it's going to be like every week, then we've got to do something seriously different. We've got to pull our socks up. We've got to work harder for each other. We've got to fight for our lives. And then I think a couple of games after that, we'd kind of drawn. I think we picked up a point. We'd lost another game. And then the Newcastle game come around. And was the 2-1 games that we were involved in. And that was the first day of the season for us. It kick-started us. And after that, it was just brilliant. Anybody would come up against, home or away. I know you're not going to win them all, but we just felt like we could win. It was brilliant.
And what was the difference in that? Because again, comparing player to player, we weren't on paper one of the best teams in the league. You know, coming up when you're saying a Christmas playing the likes of Manchester United, who could have went top of the league. Do you think it was a mindset that, or a camaraderie that made you the team better than maybe a sheet of players that on paper were better?
Definitely the dressing room. Definitely the camaraderie. It was brilliant. I mean, Peter Reid and a lot of lads will say this to you. The gaffer came in probably at the beginning of the season. He says, look, you win football matches. I don't care what you do on a Saturday night. You all go out and make sure you all go out together. You enjoy yourselves. You win together. You enjoy afterwards together. And that was what we were built on. So, yeah, we might go out. We might probably drink too much on a Saturday night after we've won a football match. But that was what he wanted. It was the way that he'd been brought up as a player. And you imagine Peter Reid's career, you go through that and how many times he'd won football matches and won trophies. But he certainly knew how to enjoy himself. And we were exactly the same. We did everything together. The camaraderie was brilliant. We just have such a laugh in the dressing room, you know, whether it be the clothes that you were wearing, If you turned up late, you know, the jokes and the laughs that we had together. But when we had to be serious, we were super serious. And it was just fantastic. Those couple of years that you're speaking about, it was a joy to be a part of it, because the football we played, the team that Reedy had put together, and I mean, people like Kevin Phillips, nobody really knew who he was. Stefan Swartz, who'd have thought somebody like him would have walked in the door at Sunderland. Quinny we had at the time, and then people who emerged like Gavin McCann, who I think he was one of the best midfielders that we had under Reedy. I really do, if not the best. And there was other players that, you know, Darren Williams, Geordie Craddock, people like that. Not superstars, but bloody hell, you knew what you were getting on a Saturday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday from them, 100% every single time.
And you can't, I suppose there's no secret training regime to that, is there? That's just probably a moment in your career where everything just fell into place, and there's probably no, you know, Pep's magic formula to that. It's just, that probably can't be bottled up and sold again to a different football club to create, can it?
No. You know, you've got to build that yourself. I mean, when you say you didn't think about it in training, when I got to Thursday and Friday, it was very tactical. We knew exactly what we were coming up against, and we knew what system we would be coming up against. So you obviously worked on that, set pieces and things, and how you could break teams down. And if the games were really tight, you know, we had ideas. And when you had the aerial threat that we had of somebody like Niall Quinn up front, and obviously the quality of Kevin, then, you know, you always give yourself a chance of winning a football match. But yeah, we used to have our laughs and jokes in training, but it was still hard. We worked our socks off Monday to Friday, but we made sure whoever we were playing against, we were prepared.
Yeah. Can you remember when you first got the call for England?
Yeah, I can. I thought it was a bit of a hoax, to be honest with you, initially. I'd got a phone call at home just before I was actually going into the training ground off Kevin Keegan. And the longer he was speaking to me on the phone, I obviously realised it was him. But what was worrying me was, I mean, me and Kevin at the time were playing championship football.
Yeah.
So to actually get an England call up, which was why I questioned it at the time when it wasn't Kevin Keegan or was it not Kevin Keegan, was because of that reason. I knew we were playing well. And there's been a lot of talk about Kevin getting into the England squad, and rightly so. You know, I mean, he should have been playing Premier League football, but we were quite fortunate to keep hold of him, to be honest with you. And I'd watched the England games. I've been watching Premier League football through that season as we were progressing through the Championship. And you judge yourself on Graham was so, you know, people like that. Stuart Pearce, who was kind of coming to the end of his career. And I just felt that they're no better than me. They're playing in a higher league, but they're no better than me. And the only thing they've got different to me is experience. So, yeah, when it come, it was like, it was unbelievable. And then after leaving the house, after taking that phone call from Kevin Keegan, you know, I drove into the training ground. I mean, I lived a minute and a half away from the training ground. It was the old Charlie Hurley at the time, not the new one. And there was just press everywhere. There was camera people, and parked the car up, and myself and Kevin walked into the dressing room, funny enough, probably around about the same time. And then after that, you know, there was photographs with England flags on your back and a bit of England training kit. And then the interviews came after that. But honestly, I believe I was ready for it, even though we were playing in the league below. And it was, I said at the beginning of this interview, it was something that I wanted to do. As soon as I started playing football, I wanted to keep playing to every single level, and playing for your country was the pinnacle, and to get the chance was unreal.
Is it difficult as a footballer to, when you get the England call up and you're comparing yourself to players who play in higher leagues, is it difficult to not think, I need to play in a higher league to now play at this level of football I want to be at? I need to leave and I need to move on. How hard is it to get over that? Yeah,
that's difficult. I think you know yourself. I mean, even when we had that season when we got 105 or 106 points, the amount of phone calls, because agents are agents, the amount of phone calls, so the agent would call me up and say, look, X, Y, Z want to take you next season. And there were some big clubs. And I knew how well I was playing. And you always think in the back of your mind, right, if it doesn't happen this season, if we don't get promoted, then I'm either asking for a move or some club's going to come in and they're going to come and buy me. I didn't want that because I wanted to try and get to the Premier League with Sunderland with a good side. So there's always things going on in the back of your mind that you've got to block out, basically not tell your family, you keep it to yourself because you just want to enjoy your football. The speculation and evidence there for everybody to see now, but in our day, it wasn't. So I definitely wanted to play for my country, and I knew we were close, but you always think in the back of your mind, I'm playing in the Championship here, it's not going to come along. And then even when you get in the England squad, how many of the players actually know you when you meet up? And that was another thing for us. And because we'd had such a great season, I walked into what you would call a restaurant room where we were all eating together. You know, people like Alan Shearer, Jamie Redknapp, Teddy Sheringham, David James, David Seaman. God, I can go through them all. You know, Tony Adams, people like that. You know, established top-class football players. What are they going to know about me? And the only thing you can do, and I think that's what me and Kevin, we probably, you know, we never left each other's side for the time we were there, was the first training session, saying to yourself in your own mind, I'm going to show them how good I am. They might have seen me playing an odd game here or there and might think, oh, he's not a bad player. But to actually play against them players in training is your way of getting across to say, right, this is how good I am and this is how much I want to play.
And did you fit in?
Yeah, there was a couple. It was difficult. Certain players were brilliant. You know, they'd come across and they'd shake your hand, they'd have a conversation with you and just say, look, you're a part of the squad. You've deserved your place in this squad. Just enjoy every single minute of it. And there was other ones where, you know, they just did their own thing. Even the Man United players, they kept themselves to themselves. You know, Scholes, I think, was in the squad. Becks. Nicky Butt might have been around the squad at the time.
What about Shearer?
Alan was hard when I first, he was difficult when I first got in the squad, only because of the rivalry, I think. And, you know, he was Mr. England at the time. I went across, shook his hand, pretty much no conversation. I think Kevin said exactly the same thing about Alan as well. But I have to say at the time, because he was so focused and everything, it didn't bother me. I was in the same squad as him. But afterwards, when we've both retired, he's a top guy. I've spoke to him on loads of occasions. I've obviously worked with him because I work in the media side of things. And he's been pretty good.
Interesting. Do you think nowadays, and this is something I picked up from what Roy Keane said about, I think it was Manchester United, they're all shaking hands and hugs after a game of football, regardless of whether they get beat. I think now there isn't that rivalry, really, is there? A lot of players from a lot of the leagues know each other because of going out, and I suppose they're attracted to each other because they understand the circles they're involved in, the social media aspect, and, you know, they're knocking about with each other, where probably back in your day, you got to meet these players for the first time when you're playing for England, where now a lot of players know each other. So I certainly believe England are gelling better now as a team than they ever have done previously. Do you think that has a more positive impact where a lot of players know each other a little bit more now?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think in my day, and you talk about the top sides and the England side that we had when I was around. I think the reason why they didn't get on with each other was because they took the Premier League super serious. And if you could get an advantage on one of your teammates, your England teammates at the time, then, you know, it was bragging rights. It was something that you wanted to do. You didn't want to give up that Premier League title. When they all met up for the England squad, there was separation. I saw that myself with the Man United players. You hardly ever saw them. They come out for something to eat, and then after that, they were back in their rooms. There was other players, like people like Paul Ince, I suppose, Dennis Wise. They were great. You could have a full conversation with them. They mingled with each other, although playing for different teams. So I think it's down to the individual, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you're right. I think the camaraderie was great. We certainly saw that at the World Cup, letting the media back in to enjoy watching the England lads and how they got on with each other, you know, the dark competitions and stuff that they used to play. If you're away in a big tournament, I wasn't fortunate enough to get to the Euros or the World Cup. You can imagine being away for 4 or 5 weeks with the same group of lads every single day. That's pretty difficult. Yeah. You know, you're going to have fallouts. You're not going to get on with every single player in that dressing room, or you're not going to socialise with all the lads. You've got your own things that you want to do. You might be a quiet guy. You might want to separate yourself. So it's down to the manager and how far he wants to take it with a squad of players that he's got. And it's certainly down to the experience and individual lads in the squad themselves of what they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. I've got a couple of quick fire questions for you before we wrap up and kind of move on to where you are now. What's the hardest player you've ever played against?
Oh, just one.
Name
I've got.
if you want.
I mean, Ronaldo's the first one. I mean, I've got to speak about Ronaldo, but I was in my time at Blackburn. We did the double over them, and it had not been done for 90 years, I don't think. And we went to Old Trafford, and I set up the winner for Morton's Gams Pedersen. I think we beat them 2-1, and that was the second game we played against them. But I played against Ronaldo twice that year, and we beat him twice. And there was another occasion when I was at Blackburn, and we beat them. So people ask me, was he the hardest? Because it's so easy to name him. I mean, he's such an incredible player. I mean, when he starts to run at you, it was just like a steam train. You're like, how the hell am I going to stop him? But what a player. What a player. But there's other one. I mean, David Beckham, wasn't the quickest in the world, but I always thought that he had decent games against him, certainly at the Stadium of Light. At Old Trafford, I think it was a little bit different. It was so hard to close him down. But one of the fittest guys I've ever played against. Just never stopped running. Half a yard, used to whip balls into the area. Top class player. Steven Gerrard, Ray Parlour, Aaron Lennon used to be a bloody nightmare to play against. Just so quick.
Yeah.
Lundberg, Freddie Lundberg. These type of players, you knew exactly what you were coming up against when you played against them. And if you weren't on your game, then.
What about tough players? Any player where you've played against and you've absolutely just shit yourself and you thought, oh no, I can't go even near him. Is there any like absolute head cases where you think on the pitch?
No, not really. I was always up for a physical challenge. I mean, I wasn't the toughest guy in the world, but I would never shirk away from a challenge. I wasn't one of these lads who was going to jump over somebody or something like that. Steven Gerrard was very tough. Played against him when he was a young lad breaking through to Liverpool. With his tough tackling, his energy levels. Stephen was tough, and Ray Parlour was very, very tough to play against. You knew exactly what was coming with Ray. If you were having a 50-50 with him, don't pull out of it, because if you do, then you'll be getting carried off the pitch. So you had to show your strength. If you didn't show your strength, then they'd beat you from the first whistle.
Yeah. What about the best player you've played with?
Right, okay. So, Kevin Phillips at Sunderland. I mean, Kevin was just incredible. Yeah. I can't speak highly enough of him, and I still get on with Kevin now. We speak once a month or something like that. Yeah. It's not every single day, but Kevin was just a sensation. He really was. Nobody expected him to do what he did when he walked through the door at Sunderland. This little scrawny lad, 5'6", 5'7". And what he achieved was just phenomenal. But the best two that I ever played with, and one of them I was only with him for a short period of time, was Henrik Larsson at Celtic.
Yeah.
He just had something that I'd never seen before in training, and then on match days, it was like, how the hell's he done that? And he just had that wow factor about him, and like top class professional, got on really well with him. And you just have to look at what he achieved in his career. I mean, you go from Celtic to Man United to Barcelona. I think it kind of tells its own story.
Yeah, it does.
He was a top draw player. He really was. But the one that I'd probably pick out as top of my list was Guy at Blackburn.
All right.
Just unbelievable. Couldn't run. I think, as pace goes, he was probably the slowest in the team. But as brain goes, is as quick as anybody I've ever seen in the Premier League. His thought process was fantastic. He could just play any pass. I was there for 3.5 years. I don't think he gave the ball away in training, never mind match days. The whole time I was there, he was just absolutely first class. Why one of the top sides never came in and took him is beyond me. I think Graham Souness has basically said exactly the same thing as well. But brilliant player, great guy. But he probably is top of the list.
Yeah. Best manager? I think I know this probably.
Well, you think you do you?
Yeah. I just like, I've heard you a few times and you always refer to Reedy as the gaffer. So I always think like he's had a massive impact on your career and your life. And there's the utmost respect there, but I'd be surprised if you chose someone else.
No, it's definitely the gaffer, because at the time, I'd been under a few managers at Sunderland, and one of them, and maybe probably the only one that I disliked, was Mick Buxton, just for certain reasons, the way he treated me, the way he spoke to me. I had no respect for the man whatsoever. But when Peter Reid walked through the door, my life changed completely. I was playing left wing, I was playing right wing, I was playing in different positions, and he went to me, said, "You're going to be playing left back." And I think I played again against Middlesbrough, actually, and we won the game. And that was the start of my career, if I'm completely honest with you.
Yeah,
he was just brilliant with me on and off the field. If I was in the bad books, he'd certainly tell me about it. He kind of took me under his wing, if you like. But he took my game from, I don't know, having a decent career to a level that I just never really thought I could reach. So yeah, I've got the utmost respect for him, absolutely.
Yeah.
All the managers I love working under, Graham Souness was such a gentleman. I say that, but we had one fallout when we played against Southampton, and I gave a goal away. We lost the game 2-1, and I thought he was going to absolutely kill me when I walked into the dressing room. But other than that, I've got so much respect for Graham and different managers who I probably worked under, who I basically thought I played my best football at Blackburn was under Mark Hughes.
Yeah. Hughes, he had a good, and then was that before he went to City? Did he go to City after?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, great that. What's the best moment of your career?
It's hard to pinpoint one. I mean, obviously making your debut, which is incredible. I mean, mine was at Derby away and then Southend, but the home debut against Barnsley was brilliant because I scored after a minute. So all the nerves and the pressure I was feeling before the game had just completely gone after a minute. So that was brilliant. Playing for your country was fantastic. And then there was, a couple of other things as well after that, I suppose you can obviously mention, but they're probably the standout ones.
Yeah, brilliant. And then how hard is it when you gave up football? How hard is it to find and establish a life after football as a player?
Yeah, it takes you a while. It takes you a few years. And a lot of people have said that before. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But because the door closes on you and like nobody there to open the next one for you, it's pretty difficult, basically walking back into the real world. That bubble's gone, and then you just got to get on with your life. But I was one who, I've got different hobbies. I've got things that I like to do. I socialise with normal guys, if I can put it that way. And I settled into it pretty well, to be honest with you. Didn't bother me. You get days where you missed it when you first walk away from it, but after that, then no, I found it fine, and I find it fine because I jumped straight into the media, so it was good.
Yeah, and I think. Have you seen it in other players where it's been very, very difficult? And I suppose you're quite lucky because you've had a massive career, right up until the day you finished, where other players where careers are cut short early. What kind of support is there around in football for them players to catch them, and how hard is it? Because, right from, my son is 8-year-old and he's in Middlesbrough Pre-Academy as a goalkeeper, and he's down at Rockcliffe once a week. Next year, if they keep him on, he's down there twice a week, and they're doing yoga and all sorts. And then I've got one of me friends' son, Lucas Stevenson, went to Liverpool a couple of years ago from Sunderland. He got taken away to Liverpool, schooled in Liverpool, is around now Liverpool under 18s, and it's like, everything they know is football right from like 14. And how do the players kind of transition into a normal life after that?
When we finished, it was hard. If lads were feeling down and they were a little bit depressed, I suppose, then they found it really difficult. I've got ex-teammates who are in exactly the same situation. Nick Summerby being one of them. He found it really difficult. He's searching around. He just didn't know what to do with himself. And he's eventually, and it took him a long, long time. He works over in the Middle East now, in Doha, in Qatar. And he's absolutely loving life. So he's been given that second chance, if you want to put it that way. Chris Macon actually lives over there with him. But I've also come across other people who haven't been so fortunate, who, find depression, they turn to drink, or things just basically don't go the way. How it's moved on, and I think now people coming to the end of their careers, there's certain people in place. We've obviously got the PFA. There's other unions that you can get involved in. There's ex-players unions that you can sign up to, and they'll find work for you if you want to. It's all down to the individual and the determination what takes you to that next level. Because let's not forget, this career is a short career. it finishes when you're 35 years old. Look, that's not even halfway through your life, if you want.
No.
You've got to find something else to move forward into. And that's something that I think a lot of players find really difficult.
Yeah. Well, I won't keep you, Mickey. I've got one more question I ask all my guests. What are you doing now your future self will thank you for?
What am I doing with myself?
What are you doing now your future self will thank you for?
Oh, bloody hell. Well, I don't know. I think I'm trying to entertain people on social media. Obviously, with I'm working in the radio and the TV and stuff like that now. So I don't know. I suppose I'll give myself a pat on the back for that, because it was something that I wanted to stay in football in some capacity. I didn't want to be a coach or a manager. And if I'm putting a smile on people's faces when they're listening to me on the radio, or they see me on TV or on social media, and I can help people out in certain ways, like I mentioned the fair share stuff before, there's other charity stuff I do, then if that helps somebody, then hopefully somebody will thank me for that one day. Yeah, brilliant, Mickey. Well, all right. It's been a pleasure. I've loved it. Thanks very much. No worries, mate. You could have went on forever. It's one of my favourite passions, Sunderland Football Club, and especially that era where you were playing in. So I appreciate that. Thanks very much. My pleasure. No worries.